So, welcome to Faith and Cow. Welcome back from our Passover break. We took a break for a week, and this is class number 151. Actually, next week, I think I'm going to be traveling, so I might be doing it from a hotel room. But we should still have a class next week. Yeah, Washington. Okay, so, well, what do we want to talk about this week? So I thought I came up with an interesting thing. That's not going to be what my wife titled it. It's going to be called How to Win an Argument. And you might think, well, there's enough arguing going on in the world, and there's all this divisiveness and polarization. And who wants to, if you win the argument, you still lose, right? So let me explain. It comes from this week's Parsha, and which is we're going to be reading on Shabbos, which is dealing with a skin disease mostly. Talks about human birth, and then immediately goes into this disease called saras, which is translated as leprosy. And I think we learned a very interesting lesson. Probably the first lesson about holistic medicine is in this week's Parsha. So, but where do you see that? So, in healing, and as I said, also a lesson about human relationships. So there is a line in the Parsha which says that when a person has this particular skin disease, which is usually a white appearance on the skin, maybe sometimes a blotchy with red or something of that sort, unless it's in the beard or in hair or something like that, then it has a different color. And this disease is translated as leprosy in English, but that's not a good translation. It's not Hansen's disease. Hansen's disease is what leprosy is. And leprosy was a contagious thing, and they used to isolate people. So they said, oh, since you're isolating people, it must be leprosy. Well, Shimshon Raphael Hirsch disputes that entirely because there's some very strange laws here. That wouldn't be at all the case if this was a contagious disease. For example, if you discover it during a holiday or during Sheva Brachas, during the week after the wedding, or those situations, then you're forbidden from being declared Tameh and having to be isolated. You would think, that's exactly when you want to isolate people, when lots of people are all around. And it's exactly the opposite, according to the halacha. So it doesn't really, and then the colors and everything else is exactly the opposite of what leprosy would be. So there's something mysterious about this disease. The rabbis say, yeah, it's because a person has an internal spiritual, psychological, emotional problem and with people, and that's why he has to be isolated. And it appears on his skin, if it's so bad, to give him an indication, you got to get your act together. And the rabbis actually also explained that usually it's because of lashon hara, speaking badly about other people, which is a social disease, right? You can't speak nicely about other people. You have to always expose their faults. Then, you have to learn, like in every Gulliver's Travels. I mean, it was a very interesting book. I read it, I reread it many years ago after I became, more religious, and it's a fascinating book. It's just a fascinating book. All he talks about is how he does tshuva. The guy was about tshuva. He just keeps talking about it. He says he was asocial, amoral. He became a slave trader. He didn't listen to his father. He was making great money, and then he got punished from above, and he was isolated on this island for 20 years until he could learn to be with human beings again. And he became a fantastic person. That the whole story is about how his growth and his maturation and everything else. You ever read it? It's Robinson Crusoe. A fascinating story, Robinson Crusoe. Anyway,
was he?
What? Go ahead.
Was he a Jew?
No. Daniel Defoe is not a Jew, and it's a classic work in English literature, and it's not.
I thought Robinson Crusoe was a Jew. That's what I'm asking.
No, and I read it. I said, this guy has got it. It really resonates. It's all about being a Baal Tshuva. It's an amazing story, and I don't know if I think people relate to it because, this whole idea of transcendence, it's not just about Jews, it's about anybody. But he's talking a storm about God and about discovering himself and who he really is and seeing himself in a mirror and realizing, he has, and at the end, he's inspiring everybody else around him. It's just really amazing. He's a tower of strength. He's saving people. He's really transformed himself at the end. So Robinson Crusoe, if you ever have the time, it is not a short book, but it's a very interesting novel. Anyway, getting back to the tsaras and to the leprosy situation there. So there's a line in there which says that the only person who can declare you as tame, meaning impure, is a Kohen. And it wasn't like the Kohanim were doctors. This is the Kohen has to see you, and the Kohen's when Kohen sees you, he looks at the tsaras, and then if he sees that it's tsaras, then he declares you tame, and you have to isolate yourself. There's a commentary called the Meshech Chachma. Meshech Chachma was Meir Simcha Cohen of Dvinsk. He was the Litvish rabbi of Dvinsk. The Rogatchover Gaon, the Rebbe's teacher and even smicha, he was the Hasidic rabbi of Dvinsk. The Rogatchover was a fantastic mind. But the Meir Simcha Cohen of Dvinsk also was a famous scholar. He wrote a book called the Or Sameach. He also wrote the book Meshech Chachma. And so and many yeshivas are named after him. It's very interesting because he didn't die childless, but he had only one daughter, and the daughter died at a young age, and she had no children. So in effect, he had nobody after him. But he has many yeshivas named after him. The Or Sameach, the famous rabbi. And he writes a commentary on here, and he says, why does it say twice that he has to see him? He says, first he sees him, and then it says, and if he sees it, tsaras. It's like, you go to the doctor, he sees you, and then he sees that it's a disease. You don't have to tell me twice. It's once is enough. And he says, this is a very important lesson. There are... And to put it in a nutshell, he says, there are two ways that people see faults or errors or see something that need to be fixed. There's you go to a doctor, and a good doctor doesn't just diagnose you and say, I see these things, and here you match this thing in the book, and here's what it is and what to do. He sees you holistically. He sees you a second time, and he looks at the whole context of who you are and what you are, and then he makes his decision on what to do. Because if you just treat things externally because you fall into this level in the book, there's a lot of problems associated with that. You have to treat people as a whole, and you have to see the context and who they are and what kind of people they are. And I'm going to give you a couple stories to really illustrate that. There was in Jerusalem, there was a famous rabbi. He was, I think his name was Moshe Schwardon. He was known as the Maggid of Jerusalem. And he wasn't a very interesting Jew, man of small stature, but a tremendous Torah scholar, very devoted to Torah. And he spent a lot of time in Israeli prisons, counseling Israeli Jewish soldiers and prisoners and things of that sort. And he was not your stereotypical kind of rabbi. And one day he was walking down the street in Jerusalem, and he saw one of his former students. And this former student had completely left the paths of religious service. And he was walking down the street, and he sees this old rabbi, and he gets embarrassed, and he doesn't want to say hello to him. So he tries to hide by going to the other side of the street. And Rabbi Schwardon saw him and walked over him and said, "Hello, how you doing? Shalom Aleichem. I haven't seen you in a long time." And the guy is like trying to hide and so forth. And his Rabbi Schwardon asks him, he says, "Can you tell me? I mean, I'm not the pry, but I saw me, and then you ran to the other side of the street, like you didn't want to say hello to me." And he says, "Actually, yeah, I didn't, because I was sort of embarrassed. You see, I no longer wear a yarmulke. I don't wear a kippah anymore, and obviously you do. And I didn't want to I didn't want to step in front of you. Rabbi Shvadron says to him, you know, I'm a man of very short stature. I mean, he was really short. And he says, I don't see that high. I can only see up to like your chest. I can't see what's on your head. And so I really didn't even pay any attention. Of course, he was giving him a lesson, and the man repeated the story and he said, it was a great lesson in life, it's like, he didn't see the faults. He didn't see the problems with the person. And so, that is also similar to a story that they tell about the Mittler Rebbe. The Mittler Rebbe was the second Lubavitcher Rebbe, and he used to see people one-on-one. And he came to one town, and he was seeing, a person comes in, they talk, another person comes in, and 2 minutes later, another one comes and talks and so forth. And the rabbi was sort of upset because he had to keep changing the rabbi's clothes. He was sweating so profusely that, it was just, after every half hour or so, he had to have a new change of clothes. And he actually said to the rabbi, I don't understand, why you're sitting in a chair? Why are you sweating so much? And the rabbi says, you have to understand that each person that comes in to see me, I have to deal with him as an individual, as a human, as who he is. I can't just give him technical answers. I have to understand who he is. In other words, what I have to do is I have to get dressed up. I have to put on his clothes. I have to see the world, how he looks at it. And changing clothes so often, in a minute, you get very worked up. So I was sweating a lot. And that's what the Meshech Chochmah explains, is that's what this is teaching. There is giving people an answer, and then there's answering the person. As they say in rabbinical school, people come to you with questions, and you can give them answers, but sometimes the answers that you give them aren't really the solution to their problem. Their problem is deeper, and they have to understand who the person is and where he's coming from. Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson, who was giving this class, gave an example. He said, one time he went to a teenage kumsitz. They were sitting by the camp and fires, and everybody was singing, and they were eating and everything else. And he sat next to a teenage boy, 18, 19 years old. And at one point, the boy turns to Rabbi Jacobson and says, it's all nice what you're saying, but I have just this one question. Said, can you answer my question? The rabbi says, I'll try. And he says, what's your question? He says, when I was 9 years old, my mother passed away. I'm one of 11 kids. I was only 9 years old at the time. Why did my mother have to die so young? And Rabbi Jacobson says, to tell you the truth, I don't know. I just don't know. I'm very sorry for what happened to you, but I just don't know. And the guy opened up and started crying tremendously. And he says, I've asked this question ever since my mother passed away, to rabbis, to other people, to all sorts of people. You're the very first person who ever said, I don't know. Everybody else tried to give me an answer. Everybody gave me an answer. And you're the first one who said, I don't know. And I appreciate that. Why? And so Rabbi Y.Y. says it's very, very important thing to understand. And that is, obviously, if you don't know, you don't know. You got to say what you don't. The other thing is, even if you did have an answer, if you really were and knew God's plans and you could give such an answer, that's not what the guy is asking. The guy is not asking for an answer. He's not looking for an answer. He wants to know, is somebody with him? Does somebody, relate to him as a human being? Can somebody, feel his pain? And that's what you have to answer. And the answer was, yeah. It's the loss of a person, as we say, is hamakam yinachem esem, that, among we all feel the loss. We all feel the loss of every single Jew. And so we're all sort of mourners. So the answer is to the person, not the technical question. Just as when you go to Holocaust survivors, you can't start explaining to them, even if you knew, why did the Holocaust happen? They're not going to accept it. Even if you could give them a good answer. It's not good to have an answer for such a question, as the Rebbe explained. So we have to say we don't know. Answer the person. Look at the whole person. This is the big lesson of this, of all healing and of all answering and of all arguments, is you can win an argument, but you don't necessarily, by winning the argument, necessarily, even if you beat the other person and overpower them with your brilliant logic and your understanding, you lose the person. And the story to really cap this out, because I'm trying to keep these things shorter now, is the following. I've told it before, I believe, but I don't think I've told it to this crowd. So here you go. I get to tell the story. It's a great story. There was a professor of exobiology in Minnesota. His name was Velvel Green. And he passed away not too long ago. I met him. I met him at a Chabad house in Boston. He spoke there. A very interesting guy, a big thinker, a big intellectual, and didn't come from a religious background at all. But at one point in time, he met Moshe Feller, the Chabad Shliach of Minneapolis, and he got interested. And he was, they were discussing different subjects, and he liked talking to him, and and he became, coming around the Chabad house, etc., things of that sort. And one of the topics that he had a big problem with was the Torah view on biology and evolution. He had a problem with it because he was a biologist. And of course, in biology, they just accept this as dogma, evolution, even though it's got some problems scientifically. It certainly does. But you just try and fix it, push those under the rug until you finally, it becomes unworkable, as all scientific theories go. That's how they work. They just develop more and more cracks until they fall apart. But until then, it's the thing. So anyway, Rabbi Feller said, listen, it's not my field. I can't really deal with this. I'm a rabbi. But the Lubavitcher Rebbe, he has a very broad knowledge of science. You can write him and you can ask him about these questions. So Velvel started to write the Rebbe about various questions, things of this sort, and that's things and so forth. Then he developed a correspondence with the Rebbe. The Rebbe would answer him, and one time, Velvel, he didn't get this answer back. He saw it in a letter to somebody else, and there was the Rebbe's position on the scientific flaws of evolution that are sort of pushed under the carpet. The basic ones, which is all science is about experimenting and then being able to reproduce the experiment. If you can't reproduce the experiment, how can you prove it? It's about objective. And if objectivity means you have to be able to not just speculate what happened in the past. Anybody can come up with theories in the past, but you have to be able to rigorously. Anyway, and various other problems that are associated with this about how this could possibly happen and the speed and the time and by just randomness, how do you create, anything of this amazing structure, things of that sort. It's just random cards just don't accidentally create 40 billion cells, each with a DNA, literally the length of 3 times the height of the Empire State Building, and everything has to be sequenced exactly right. Otherwise, the whole thing doesn't work together. So, how do you get that by just randomly throwing things? It doesn't work too well. Anyway, he read this. And he blew up. He just was, and so he wrote back to the Rebbe a very sharp letter and says, I respect you a lot. And because I respect you, I think I can talk to you very straightly, scientist to scientist, because or a scientist to a thinker. And because what you're saying just doesn't fall at all within science, and he brought down this argument, that argument, and he wrote off a very sharp, very pointed letter to the Lubavitcher Rebbe about all the flaws in his letter. And he got a letter answer back. And he was reading the answer back, and it was all talking about how nice it is. You're sending your kids to summer camp, and it's an important thing to do, and how beneficial it could be for the children. And, that was it. It really didn't discuss any of the subject at all. And Velvel figured, the Rebbe's a gentleman. He's not going to argue with me. And basically, he heard what I said, that the Rebbe should stick to his business and stay out of science. And so this is his way of admitting, science is not for him. And time went on. Maybe 8 years went on. And Vel became more and more connected to the Chabad and to learning. And eventually he started sending his kids to day school, which is usually the marker for somebody who's really committed at this point in time, because you don't learn too much in Sunday school coloring menorahs. It's sort of an empty kind of Judaism. It doesn't really give you too much. So when you start sending it to day school, it means you're serious about this. So he was satisfied. He had gotten most of his answers answered and so forth like that. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, he was writing about something else, and the Rebbe writes him a long answer and starts explaining to him point by point by point answers to every single question that he brought up 8 years before. And Vella was very impressed with it. He said, it's brilliant, it's logical, it's clear. He had every single an answer for every single objection that I brought up, and they're good answers. And he didn't have any problem with what the Rebbe was saying at that point in time. And he reads at the end, there's a postscript. And the postscript read as follows. And the Rebbe says, you may wonder if I had all these answers 8 years ago, why didn't I write you with them? Why did I wait till now? And the Rebbe says, I could have answered you then. But if I answered you then, I would have won the argument, but I would have lost a chassid. And my job, the Rebbe says, is not to win arguments. My job is to win the hearts and minds of Jewish people.
So you're saying that, because I missed half of what you just said, basically what you're saying is that he had all the answers, but he didn't really want to fight with him because he wanted to have like Chabad and the Torah like sort of permeate his soul and heart. And then once he became religious or whatever, then he sent him the answers, right? Something like that.
Yeah. He wanted the person. So you can, so when you're dealing with human beings and so forth, in this is in all health and all trauma and all other issues that people are going on, you can look at them objectively, externally. You can look at them just as, as some psychologists, right? They look at the person and they say, which page on the diagnostic standard manual do they fit into? And, it sounds like his symptoms fit into this box. And therefore, you treat the person like a box and you give them a cure out of the manual and so forth like that. That's never really the way to deal with a person because everybody's slightly different and they have different contexts and different issues. Even with physical diseases, this works that way. So real healers and real doctors and real human beings, when they talk to other people, are always sensitive to the whole context of the person and to understand where they're at and what they can accept at a particular time and what they're able of doing and where they're at and what's going on in their life and other things of that sort. And then it fits in and then it works. And so all of this, shouting, I think in the political field is also people just don't even begin to understand what is motivating and what is pushing the other person and so forth. And it leads to a lot of polarization and divisiveness and misunderstandings. It doesn't mean that the other person is right, as the Rebbe knew he wasn't right, and so forth. But he knew that the connection and the relationship was more important than the winning of the argument. And it's a good lesson, I think, for these times, and it's a good lesson for us, and it's a good lesson at all times in how to heal the world. And with that, I will flip the camera over to my holy wife, who has something to say about trusting God. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to wish you all a very good week and hope to see you next week. Thank you so much.
Simmons. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. How's everybody? How is everybody's Pesach?
Hi, Shalom Shavit. It's nice to see you.
Nice to see you. So, anyway, good. So I'll start out with the 5 things that I'll start out with the 5 things that I usually say, the 4 things that I usually say, which is number 1, we're in an extraordinary time. And what I mean by that is that it's extraordinary because the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who was never wrong about a public prediction that he made, told us that we've entered the era of the redemption, the beginning stages of the era of redemption. And so anyway, that's what's extraordinary. What we've waited 2,000, we've waited since the creation of the world for. The second thing is that you and I were handpicked to be in this time because we have an important role to play, each one of us. The third thing is that we were given all the tools that we need. The Torah is our guidebook and the mitzvahs are our tools. And they are what we need to accomplish our mission, why we were put on earth, and the role that we have to play in the redemption. And the last thing is that what we're doing tonight by learning about the redemption actively, it's the most powerful thing a person can do to speed the redemption. That's what the Rebbe said. If you want to speed the redemption, learn about it. It's the best tool. So anyway, I remember years and years ago, I used to think that it's easy for me to trust myself, but it's hard for me to trust Hashem. That's what I used to think years ago. But it's easier for me to love Hashem, and it's hard for me to love myself. But as I got older and more mature, I realized that it's not quite that clear. That it's not that I realized that there's an intimate connection between trusting Hashem and trusting myself. The more I am my own best friend, the more I'm ready to believe that Hashem is my best friend. I mean, I know Hashem is my best friend, and I love Hashem, and I have thank God, and like we all do, I have a beautiful relationship with Hashem. But that relationship improves when I improve my relationship to myself, meaning that I do the things that I do the things that I need myself to do for myself. So there's an interesting expression in Hebrew. How do you say? Just a second, I'm going to close the story. It's a little noisy. How do you say self-confidence in Hebrew? Does anybody know? Self-confidence. So you say the word self-confidence. In Hebrew, it's called bitachon atzmi. It means bitachon. We all know what bitachon means. It means trust, faith, but in yourself. Bitachon atzmi. And in English, it doesn't have the same connotation when you say self-confidence. When you say self-confidence, for most of us, we think of a person who walks into a room and they have a magnificent posture, and they're not shy. They know how to speak. They're totally relaxed, and they give a good impression to others. But bitachon atzmi is a much more internal thing. When you say it in Hebrew, trust in yourself, not self-confidence, not oh, I'm at ease in public. No, bitachon atzmi is you can count on yourself to do that which is important for yourself. So I remember this Pesach, it was a wonderful Pesach, thank God. And one of the most marvelous, there was a lot of very, very nice parts to Pesach. And one of the, and I remember, I think, the holiday ended on a Thursday night. And I had a house guest, a friend who had stayed with us for most of the Yontif, and she was still there. And the three of us, cleaned up after Pesach. We cleaned, the dishes, we emptied emptied the Pesach dishes, transferred food, all that kind of stuff. And then the next, and then we went to sleep. And then in the morning, we just went at it, and we packed everything up, and everything was back in the attic, except for fine details by 1:30 in the afternoon. And for me, that was incredible. That was just incredible. And that was Erev Shabbos, and then I made Shabbos, and then Shabbos morning I walked to shul, and I noticed everybody's smiling at me with such a nice smile. And I realized, you know why everybody's smiling at me like that? Because I have the biggest smile on my face, like I just won $1 million. And I was walking with most magnificent posture. And I was thinking, why do I feel this great? Why do I feel like this? Why am I so open to life? Why am I so trusting of life? Why am I radiating such confidence, such happiness? Yeah, I was extremely happy and extremely confident. And I realized that a very big part of it is that um, I was so I okay, first of all, 2 reasons. I'm not gonna take it away from Hashem. One big reason is all that matzah we eat on Pesach. All that matzah is food of faith. And so I was nourished from inside, from Hashem, only something that Hashem can do. And the other thing is not having all that stuff hanging on me, like putting away. I still didn't put away Pesach. It's like, you know, whoa, I took care of myself. We took care of first things first, so I don't have that burden on me for the rest of the week or whatever. And I realized that part of life is just being your own best friend, taking care of the stuff that is difficult for you, but it's very important to take care of. And when you do that, you are much more open to life, much readier to trust Hashem too. So anyway, that day, I still, I'm pretty much always in a good mood, but that was like exceptional. But I have to say that day was very interesting. I got many, many challenges that day. And it's like, Hashem was testing me, or Hashem was allowing the Yetzer to test me. And there were so many things that I saw that could have sent me plunging into personal self-pity or something like that. And because I was so happy, I recognized it. I said, oh, yeah, you want me to tumble down that track? I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I'm choosing to be like this with Hashem, to be happy, to be confident in Hashem's kindness, and that's it. And not to look at what anybody else has and what I don't have. I have the life that Hashem gave me, and that means that's perfect for me. So anyway, part of trusting in God also means avoiding distractions from life, like anger, worry, jealousy. I realized my life is absolutely crafted for me. And nobody else's life is even significant. It doesn't matter what somebody else has. It doesn't matter that I don't have. It doesn't matter because I might as well be, let's say, let me give an example. So let's say somebody has something that I've always wanted. Just because they have it doesn't mean anything about my life. Hashem created my life uniquely for me. It's uniquely perfect for me. So so let's say I'm jealous of somebody. I might as well be jealous of a Martian because their life what's theirs is theirs. What's mine is mine. And just because they have something and I don't have it doesn't mean they have something that I don't have. I have everything that I was meant to have. So I remember Rabbi Friedman once said, Rabbi Manis Friedman, he has 14 kids at Kanai Nahara Poo Poo Poo. And who knows how many grandchildren and great-grandchildren. You should be blessed. And they should all be blessed. Anyway, he was a woman in the audience. In one of his audiences, somebody asked him how many kids he had. And he said 14. And she said, don't you realize that there are some people who have no children? Don't you realize there's some people who have no children? They have one child, and you have 14 children. And he started feeling a little guilty. And then he realized, wait a minute, They're my children. I didn't take them away from anybody. It's not like I went to the store and I bought up everything. They're my children. And they're the children that Hashem intended him to have. And whatever Hashem intended for the other person is exactly what the other person is supposed to have. So the thing that will enable them to achieve their highest potential. So anyway, we are on. Today is the 26th of Nisan, and we're going up. We're going into the 27th of Nisan, and then it's going to be the 28th of Nisan. The power of Nisan. We know that Nisan is a very auspicious month. It's the month that it's the month Hashem says it's the most likely month for the redemption. And besides for that, on the 28th of Nisan in 1991, the Rebbe gave an incredibly powerful speech. He said something that was incredibly powerful that we should all take to heart. The Rebbe said that on the 28th of Nisan that he has done absolutely everything that's incumbent on him, everything that he can do to bring Mashiach. And he said, what else can I do? The only other thing I can do is to turn the job over to you. It is now your job. Go turn the world over, turn it upside down, but bring Mashiach. And the Rebbe said that one way to bring Mashiach is to prepare people for it, to tell other people, the Rebbe said it's happening, and the Rebbe was never wrong, never made a public pronouncement that was wrong. And, he predicted nobody would be hurt in the Gulf War, even though there were 39 Scuds that eventually were launched again against Israel and took direct hits in Israel. Not one person was injured. He predicted the downfall of communism before Gorbachev ever dreamed he would do such a thing. The Rebbe made totally unlikely predictions that all came true. And so there's no reason to doubt that this one is also not coming true. And the Rebbe said one way we can speed the redemption is obviously to learn about it. And another way is to be a friend to other people, be a friend to other Jews and tell them that this is what is happening and not to be shy about it. Because can you imagine the redemption comes and somebody finds out that you knew it was going to happen and why did you let me know? I could have gotten ready. And so anyway, so I want to end just by saying that that this Pesach, I'm taking away from Pesach that that I want to live much more up to my standards for myself, and that makes a person much more open to trusting Hashem that things will go good from Hashem for the things that they have no control over. So I'm going to end the recording and ask for any questions.